Hello guys, and welcome back to another cold episode. On today's episode, we're talking about the best decks to help you climb to Master 1 in Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel. And I've kind of structured my tier list slightly differently this time because of the fact that I specifically wanted to talk about the best decks to climb with in Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel. So not just necessarily any deck, but specifically climbing best of 1. How does that, factor in? Does that necessarily change what the best deck is, etc.? And so because of that, I've structured my tier list in this way. Easy Master 1s, Master 1, can Master 1 with effort, Master tier, and then everything else. Almost nothing should be in these two tiers. Because you can kind of master, you can get to Master tier with almost everything, right? And in fact, you can get to Master 1 with almost everything. So, there you go. Let's start off here with the Synchron. Synchron is fine. This is more of the Synchro-centric with the new Revolution Synchron and stuff like that, and with TGs and all of that stuff. It's fine. It's not great right now, with hand traps running around, and this being a deck that kind of dies to 1 or 2 well-placed hand traps. So, not great. Infernoids exist. Snake Eyes. Snake Eyes is probably the first of the easy Master 1s. Now, notably, Snake Eyes is a fine pure deck. We'll get into that later. But overall, I think it's much better as an engine, and I think almost everyone knows this. And yeah, it's very, very strong. Promethean Princess paired up with Poplar, paired up with all of the other Snake Eyes stuff. It's very strong. Next up, we have Branded. Branded, I think, is also another easy Master 1. You can pretty easily get to Master 1 with this deck. Still has a lot of access to basically whatever it wants to do. Overall, decently strong deck. Next up, we have Mana. Mana is going to go in Master 1. The problem that I have with Mana Dimion is the fact that it is a combo. It's a very, very go-first deck. Yes, it can play going second cards. Yes, it can play hand traps and, other such stuff to help it go second. But not only is it a go-first deck that kind of has to do its combo or die, it also doesn't really play well into Maxi, it doesn't really play well into Droll, it doesn't really play well into a lot of different cards, and it really makes it significantly weaker. I know a lot of people were like, oh, this deck's really, really strong. It's decent, it's a good deck, but the problem is that it does get stopped by hand traps, whereas something like Super Heavy Samurai doesn't. And yet, even then, I do think that Super Heavy Samurai is just not as good. It still has silver bullets, right? It still gets absolutely stomped by things like Droll and Maxi, and it can't really play as many outs to things like Maxi and Droll that something like Mana can. But even with all of that being said, Mana Dimion is harder. It doesn't really get as many one-card combos as easily as something like Super Heavy Samurai. Super Heavy Samurai has multiple one-card combos that just immediately start you into a very, very good position, and it can also play a myriad of hand traps. Mana kind of can't do that as much. It kind of can't play as many hand traps. So yeah, they're kind of okay. They're not great. I would honestly say Mathmech is probably the better of the combo decks if you're going to play any of them. Just being able to access code OTK if you get Maxied or Drolled or something like that is fun. So there's that. Yeah, the deck's just very, very strong overall. It just kind of has a slight advantage over these two because of that access code OTK with Update Jammer, as well as just the fact that it is just as good going first. So there's that. Next up, Vanquish Soul is pretty decent. I think this is a deck that a lot of people think way more highly of, or thought way more highly of, than it actually was. It's a fun deck. It's an incredibly fun deck to play. It is not very good. Or at least in comparison to the rest of the metagame. Next up we have Labyrinth. Labyrinth is easy Master 1. It's not even close. This is probably the best going first deck in the game, because it can very easily pick apart opponents' boards, and it has the ability to play a whole bunch of hand traps. For example, Droll. It also doesn't care at all about Droll. It also does not care about Maxi. Two cards that are very common right now. So there you go. Next up, Revolution Synchron. Revolution Synchron is it's kind of just like a card, but it facilitates some very interesting decks, and those decks are pretty okay. It's basically all I'm going to say. They're not great, they're not bad, they're kind of just like worse combo decks. They're very high roll, that's kind of it, but they can still master one. Next up, we have Infernoble. Infernoble is a very good deck. That's it, it's just a very good deck. Being able to play the Snake Eye stuff means that it can master one easily. Not easily, but it can master one. It also has the ability to just play Isolde, which is an absolutely insane card. And Charlemagne is just a powerhouse of a card as well, so having access to that guy is very, very powerful. If you don't know, that's the Great Emperor Charles, it's the Link one. It's called Charlemagne, and it will always be called Charlemagne. If you think it's not called Charlemagne, you're wrong. So there you go. Very strong deck. Yeah. Of the combo decks, I would say that this one is the best. Though, if you've noticed, all of the combo decks are not quite in easy tier, in easy master one, and that's mostly because of Maxi. Maxi just makes it not easy to get to master one with a combo deck. That's pretty self-explanatory, right? If you have a more mid-range or control style, you're going to have a lot easier of a time getting to master one, unless you're just like way better than everything else, which we'll get into. Naturia is good. I don't really have anything else to say about this deck. It's good. It can do stuff. It's not the best. Runic's nice. It's not great. Pretty heavily limited. Anyway, moving on. We have Runic Furhire, or Furhire Runic Sprite stuff. This deck is honestly pretty strong. It's very good. It has a wonderful ability to pick apart boards due to the Runic stuff. The problem is that Runic is so heavily limited that you just kind of can't do anything. With only one Runic Fountain, it means that the deck really does slow down quite a lot. And that means if you get ashed, it's even more detrimental. And so, yeah, there's that. Next up, we have Kashtira. Kashtira is probably one of the best decks to climb with. Why? Because no one is freaking prepared for this deck. It can go first, it can go second, and it's very, very strong. Now, I know what you're saying. What are you talking about, Snow? Kashtira is super inconsistent if you're playing it poorly. However, if you pair it with any sort of normal summon engine, you're probably going to do pretty well. Now, most notably, this is paired with Zodiac. And then you just kind of win, because Zodiac is absolutely overpowered. Zodiac is a very underrated deck. I think a lot of people saw like one Joshua Schmidt stream where he played pure Zodiac and said, that's it, that deck sucks, and then stopped thinking about it. And honestly, that's good for you. If you want to climb, yeah, just take advantage of the people who think that Zodiac can't do anything, and then absolutely clown on them because Zeus is a powerhouse. You don't even need two Zeus. Just slap down one, watch as your opponent writhes in pain, because nothing can deal with Zeus right now. Yeah, Zeus is powerful, UDF is powerful, making a Rise Hard is powerful. All of these are very good, paired with 4 hand traps in your hand. It's very, very nice, and it's very consistent. There you go. Yeah, this is one of the best decks to climb with. That's it. It's not necessarily one of the best decks, period. It's just one of the best decks to climb with. If it was not a best of one, if it was not specifically a ladder system, yeah, this would probably fall to down here. It's not all that great. But because it is a best of one, because it is a ladder system, because it is a thing that you don't get to know what your opponent is playing going into that match, you have all of the advantages, basically. Sprite is very strong still. This is a very underrated deck. Elf is such a powerhouse by itself. It doesn't matter that like everything is limited. Sprite is still absolutely insane. However, this falls into a similar boat as Snake Eyes, where it's kind of more of an engine as Sprite than just Sprite itself. You can technically still play like Sprite frogs and stuff like that as a more like Sprite-centric, level 2-centric strategy, but you're better off pairing it with things like Tri-Brigade or Life Twin. So there's that. Despia, or Dogmatica, I guess, exists. Rescue Ace is probably the best deck in the game. I know a lot of other people are saying it's just pure Snake Eyes. You should play pure Snake Eyes. Don't listen to them. They're lying to you. You should play the Rescue Ace version. If you have the Rescue Ace version, play it. If you don't, I'm sorry. You should probably have been playing this. This is probably by far the best deck. And the reason I say this is because unlike pure Snake Eyes, which is the advantage of playing pure is that you can play a myriad of hand traps. The difference is, with Rescue Ace, you have the ability to make a better end board, which is actually pretty nice right now, and the end board ends on basically 4 additional points of interaction through Turbulence, while also still being able to play a lot of interaction through non-engine. So it's kind of like the best of both worlds. You still get that non-engine stuff, or you still get a lot of non-engine through the through utilizing smaller engines, but then you also have more power to push through, to end on bigger boards, to have more interactions going first, and to like push through with more engine that your opponent has to interact with going second, which is just the advantage of playing Rescue Ace. Ignister is fine. It's just one of the worst cyber strategies. That's it. Notably, I would also put Marincess and Salamangreat basically right here. All of the cyber strategies besides Mathmech are like in the exact same spot. If you're not going to play the Mathmech cards, most notably Circular, yeah, you're kind of just playing a worse cyber strategy, and therefore it's just, again, objectively worse. Next up, Flunder. Flunder is pretty good. It's pretty inconsistent, but being able to activate like Dimension Shifter or Macrocosmos or something like that is very nice. Stun is a deck that is, again, just like the epitome of inconsistency. And sure, if you draw the exact floodgates that you need, it works. If you don't, you have to sit through an opponent's combo and then die. Smile. Dynamorphia exists. Tearlament is actually pretty underrated as well. I think it's still decently strong and has a lot of power going for it. You can play Tier Cash. You can play you can play Tier Branded. You can play Tier Zodiac. Probably. You probably can't do that because Zodiacs would like require the normal summon, and you also want a normal summon in Tearlament. But you get my point, right? You can play Tearlament with a whole bunch of other things, similarly to playing Sprite with a whole bunch of other things. So, yeah, it's still pretty decent. Moving on. Purley is still very strong. Not insane, but decently strong. It has the ability to still make its consistent end boards. If you want, you can play the Ghost Trick stuff, but that seems very, very inconsistent, and I'd much rather play, like, hand traps than a Ghost Trick card. But you could. And then you can make UDF and make a better end board. But again, because of the amount of hand traps that I think a lot of people are playing, it's just not really worth it to play a better end board, right? Instead, it's better to play those additional hand traps. Because you don't really need a better end board. Like, Noir is the best end board. Like, it just, like, objectively. It's so incredibly strong. So you don't really need another one. Makonko's fine. Makonko notably can be played with the Infernoble stuff as well as the Snake Eyes stuff to kind of make a pseudo earth, or not earth, fire kind of pile. It's not great. It kind of brings down the other two archetypes as we see. Like, they're pretty decent, at least in my mind. And this just kind of brings it down. It's fine. It does stuff. It can go second. It can OTK. It's just inconsistent. Dragon Link is still very, very strong. I know a lot of people said that it was like, oh, is dead because of Wyverburster being banned. I still think the deck has a lot of plays. I think it's just that most people don't really want to play those because they want to play the new fire stuff, and that's reasonable. I still think that Dragon Link is very strong, though. Sword Soul is fine. The problem with Sword Soul is that if the exact amount of interactions that you make is not enough to entirely stop your opponent, you do just kind of immediately lose the game. And right now, making 4 points of interaction, maybe 5, just isn't enough. You kind of need more than that. And you kind of can't do that in Sword Soul. It's very difficult, it's very linear to get like anything else. Or, sorry, it's very linear, it's very difficult to get anything else out of a Sword Soul end board. Sure, potentially you could if you draw, like, if your opponent draws, like, no interaction, you could maybe end on a really big end board with, like, multiple synchros and stuff like that. going through like Abaxia into Xiaofeng into yada yada. That's not really great right now. But you could, and then maybe that does something. It probably doesn't. That's the biggest issue. Yeah. Orcust is here. It's doing its thing. I don't really have anything to say about Orcust. It's just not really good. Like, yeah, it can kind of do its thing. Again, similarly to Sword Soul, just worse. Phantom Knights are okay. I'm actually just gonna put these two up here. They can. But yeah, they're not great. Dinos are fine. They got a lot better with the new cards that were released in the Transcendosaurus stuff, which is pretty nice. But all in all, they're still doing Dino things, Miscellaneousaurus or bust kind of stuff. Exosister is all right, and then Gold Pride Punk is also all right. None of them are doing anything too notable. The Gold Pride Punk stuff, I guess I should talk about for a little. But yeah, Exosister, hey, being able to activate Shifter is pretty good. That's kind of it. It dies to Ash, which is funny. It also kind of dies to Droll, depending on your hand. Like, if you have to start with packs, you do just kind of lose right there. Like, you can't really do much more. So there's that. Unless you hard drew everything. Which is highly unlikely. Anyway, Gold Pride Punk is... It's another combo deck, but it's a more inconsistent combo deck than these three up here, which is why I put it so much lower. Sure, it technically has the ability to, like, do stuff and kind of, like, make mid-range boards through Droll and what have you, but it's just not really as worthwhile to do something like that. And on top of that, while sure the Punk stuff can make it a little bit better by being able to end on Pep, that's still not all that great. Like, Pep is very strong right now. I'm not going to act like it's not. It's just that the rest of that board, outside of Pep, kind of doesn't do enough, and it does die to the same things, which makes it kind of difficult to climb. You can get your board broken fairly easily, especially compared to other such combo decks that are above it, while also not having the ability to play as much non-engine, and you have a harder time going second and stuff like that. So it's just kind of like a worse combo deck. It's still good. It's still fun. You can still definitely master one. It's just not as good. And that's kind of it for this list. Hopefully this made sense. But yeah, as you can tell, this is a lot. Most decks can get to master one if they're reasonably decent. So yeah, that's kind of it. The easy master ones, though, are probably these, at least in my eyes. Even pure Snake Eyes could probably get there. But yeah, that's going to be it for this episode. I hope that you guys did indeed enjoy. If you did, like us very much, so appreciated. And if you want to check out more content like this, as well as more Yu-Gi-Oh!, then just be sure to subscribe. And thank you guys so much for watching, and remember to always stay frosty. Bye-bye. Shout out to the Frost Guard, my members. Thank you guys so much for the support, and I hope you enjoy the content.